Yeah. There's a funny bit in Going Clear in the book where I think Cruz sees it and it's like, this is so embarrassing for Scientology. He's really upset about it.
Well, he was upset that they showed that video of him, saluting, to LRH. They salute when they got the medal,
right?
All that crazy shit.
That's all over YouTube.
The recruitment video.
Was he upset about that being leaked?
Yeah. Oh, they tried to get that taken down, and of course, it spread like wildfire through the internet because you just can't take things like that down.
No, it's classic. Although a lot of stuff's been, there are a lot of great Scientology videos that have been taken down.
Really?
Yes. Like there's a famous one that's very hard to find. It's the orientation video that was shown to new parishioners. This is back in the 80s, and it was done by an infomercial pitchman who was then a Scientologist and then subsequently left. By the way, do you know they don't cast Scientologists in Scientology commercials? Do you know why?
Why?
Because they blow too often. Like they leave, and then they no longer want to be in the video, or it becomes embarrassing to have someone speak. Can you imagine if Leah Remini was in a commercial for Scientology? They'd never be able to use it again, right?
Right.
So they can't. It's sort of insurance because they want to be able to use They spend a lot of money on the commercial, and they don't want to be embarrassed when the Scientologist who's the star of the commercial leaves Scientology and says that they were brainwashed.
That's their actual reason for doing it?
That's what I'm told, yeah.
How many of them left?
What's
the retention rate?
I don't know. They keep the data very close to their chest. So I know that they have, they say millions. I think they say 40 million, some vast amount worldwide. I know that on Tony Ortega's blog, I think there's a U.S. Census data that perhaps suggests in the U.S. it might be 20 or 30,000. We should probably get that fact checked. But I believe I read that there are more people who identify as Jedi as their religion than there are Scientologists.
I'm a Jedi. I just decided. Is it a long process to become a Jedi, or can you just claim it?
I think this is a long process, but it's very cheap. It's the good thing.
Oh, well, I've watched all the movies. I think I'm in. It's amazing to me that this exists. I understand that it exists. Intellectually, when I sit back and I look at the many, many different religions and many, many different ideologies that people subscribe to, and the vast amount of people out there that are searching for truth and answer and something to belong to. Even though all those things make sense to me intellectually, I'm still fascinated. I'm still so puzzled that in 2016, with the internet, with all the access to information that we have today, that still exists.
It's and you look forward and you wonder, it will, is this going to fizzle out? But I think what they've done is they've kind of created a marketing juggernaut that is, if not immune to, but at least highly resistant to any attempt to discredit or undermine. So I read a thing that said, well, it's a religion that sells secrets, right? That's its USP. You advance up, you pay more money to get the more secret levels, and the internet is kryptonite to that, because the internet is a machine for revealing secrets. WikiLeaks and whatnot. And you can Google anything. So that will be Scientology's Waterloo. Will be the fact that we now have searchable data. But it shows no signs of coming apart. That the numbers may not be high, but the amounts of revenue coming in are huge from what I can tell. And I get the feeling that, you just have to see how, the amount that they're able to spend on advertising, the number of new buildings that go up. So however small it may be, it has a huge punching power.
Where are they getting the money from?
It's an interesting point. The first thing is that it's structured almost like a McDonald's. So, and in fact, interestingly, in 1950, the year that Dianetics was published, was also the first year that McDonald's was established. That's pointed out by, I don't know if you ever read Janet Reitman's book, Inside Scientology. It came out a year before Larry Wright's book, Going Clear. But so it was slightly, its thunder was stolen by Going Clear, but it's also an excellent book and a great primer. If you enjoyed Going Clear, I highly recommend Inside Scientology. And she points this out, that in 1950, McDonald's was invented, and so was Dianetics. So they basically it's a franchise system in which they are sort of selling they own the property of the various buildings in which Scientology is sold, and then they license the materials, but they can't really, some of the franchisees can lose money, but Scientology itself can't really lose money because they're just getting rents from the people who are selling the Scientology. Does that make sense, the services?
But it doesn't make sense that they get that much revenue from that.
Well,
I know they're
they get
gigantic real estate holders.
So they have huge amounts of real estate. The other part of it is that because it's a religion, the money is tax deductible or whatever. Like, they don't pay taxes on it in essence, and so I think that means that it's very hard for them to lose money. It's a huge cushion against financial failure.
Well, that was a really disturbing part of the documentary, which showed how they became a tax-exempt religion. The government essentially caved under the threat of massive amounts of lawsuits.
Yes, yeah, they were. Basically, the Scientologists found a way to pressure individual IRS employees to the point where their lives had become extremely hard. So they settled. But
what year was that when that happened?
I want to say, I want to get this right, 92, I would say. 92, maybe 93.
It's amazing that that's upheld.
I know. But then again, the benchmark for having charitable status is not that high. Look at the Clinton Foundation, right? I mean,
yeah.
There are the people scrutinizing what qualifies as a charitable enterprise do not seem to be
working,
especially on top of their game. And so I think once that's in place, I think the other part of it is, so you pay. One of the routes for finance is, you pay for services, you turn up, you spend, I want auditing, so I get an auditing package for $300 and you get, 5 sessions. But the other thing is they solicit donations, and 5 or 6 times a year they have large events. And that's the footage of Tom Cruise is at one of these events, and they're like these huge Hollywood-style award ceremonies where they pack hundreds of Scientologies into an auditorium. And they both look quite impressive. So to the outsider, they look kind of grandiose and impressive. But they are, in essence, a kind of live infomercial event where everyone who's there is then aggressively regged, which means they're aggressively hit up for donations. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So anytime you see one of those events, all those people who are at the event, before they can leave, someone comes up to them and says, "How committed to Scientology are you? We would sincerely appreciate an expression of your support." And they're guilt-tripped into making a donation, a tax-deductible donation. And I'm sorry, I know I'm rambling, but there's a lot of information. So they get huge amounts of money for that, and that money then. One of the good things about that is that can never be revoked. Like, if you leave, one of the problems they had in the past was if you spend $10,000 on credit and say, "I love Scientology, this is going to be amazing," and then you like $1,000 into your services, you're like, "This isn't doing anything, I want to leave," and then you ask for your money back, and it's very hard for you to get your money back. Whereas the donations that are made to something called the IAS, Association of Scientologists, you can't get those back once you leave. Anyway, I'll make it very simple for you. There's very rich Scientologists who make large donations, basically. There's a guy called Bob Duggan who's a multi-billionaire who's donated literally tens of millions.
Poor bastard.
I mean, and there's a lot of actors who,
well, Leah Remini
Nancy
is
Cartwright.
one of the she's one of the most famous detractors, right? Person who's left
right until she was like one of its most famous supporters.
Yeah. But that's weird because like her turnaround was like that. I know.
I have a lot of respect for that. I mean, I think there's a lot of guys like this guy I was talking about, this pitch, the infomercial pitch man who did the orientation video that was taken down from YouTube. He's called Larry Anderson, right? And I really wanted to interview him for our film because I just thought the orientation video is so funny. It's one of this it's this video where they say, he goes, "Welcome to Scientology. If at the end of this video you decide this is not for you, that's fine. You're welcome to leave, just as you're free to throw yourself off a bridge or blow your brains out." And so it's this very over-the-top kind of thing. It's just ludicrous. But he left Scientology, so they couldn't show it anymore. But he left. And like most high-profile defectors, he just didn't want anything more to do with it. He's just like, I'm done. And very often they cut a deal where they say, fine, Scientology will say, like, we'll let you do the X, Y, and Z, whether it's get some money back, speak to your people, your friends and family who are still in Scientology, but we don't want you speaking out. And so then the defector will be like, okay, fine, I want a simple life. But Leah Remini, to her credit, has actually, gone out there and absolutely made it a mission to call them out.
How far did she get?
I don't know where I think she was quite far. Most of the actors, I think actors, they're considered people of influence, and so they get a certain amount of services for free. That's the impression I have. And so I think they're encouraged to go up the bridge quite quickly.
I had a neighbor who's a Scientologist, and he wanted to buy a piece of property, and we had a discussion about this, how I found out he was a Scientologist. He said out of nowhere, we started talking about this. He's like, yeah, I'm thinking about buying it, but right now my wife is about to go clear. And I go, this is a long time ago. I go, what does that mean? And then he starts expressing what it means, and that she's no longer going to be influenced by negative thoughts, and this is going to cost $50,000. And
it's probably more now.
Probably. This is the 90s, but $50,000 for a ceremony where you're no longer going to be influenced by negative thoughts.
And then you find out, actually, footnote, there's this other thing you have to deal with, and then there's another, like, 15 levels. So, yeah, it's a funny one.
Did you talk to Leah Remini?
We approached her. I should explain that we took a specific approach. We knew going into it, I had been gestating this idea for years, and I'd been fascinated with Scientology going back to the late 80s when I was a student, and then I remember in 90 or 91, I took a tour around the L. Ron Hubbard Life exhibit there on Hollywood Boulevard, and had this weird feeling of, if you've ever gone in where you just think, wow, it's like they took a person who was kind of an average sci-fi writer and attempted to make him sound like he was the second coming of Jesus. And so everything is spun, and it's just a weird feeling, seeing a whole museum dedicated to someone who seems to have been a relatively unremarkable person. Do you know what I mean? And so they're working extremely hard, saying, like, he was one of the youngest ever Eagle Scouts to ever qualify in the state of Montana. And you're like, well... And I was like, my dad was an Eagle Scout. Like, that's not that big a deal, is it? And so then I remember halfway through, I thought, well, this was funny for 10 minutes. And then an hour later, when you're on this guided tour, I've had enough. And so I said, I really need to leave. And they go, well, where do you need to go? Like, what's so important that it's more important than you've seen the rest of it? And I suddenly felt under pressure, that uncomfortable feeling of like, oh, wow. And I had to pretend that I needed to be somewhere just to get out of the building. Anyway, so years go by, and I think I'd love to make a program about it, and then I could never quite find... I approached them, and they said, long story short, we're not really interested. They took me on a tour of the Celebrity Centre. They strung me along for a bit, but it was pretty clear quite quickly that they weren't going to let me in. So a few more years went by, and I was approached by a Hollywood producer called Simon Chin, who made Man on Wire and Searching for Sugar Man. So he's well credentialed, and he's like, you should do something about Scientology. I gave him the spiel about why I hadn't, because they won't let me in. And as you know, my way of making documentaries is by invitation. I make an approach and people say yes, and they let me in.
Oh, you're very polite in your approach.
Yes, and actually, I've done whatever, big game hunting, or the Westboro Baptist Church, or gurus in India. But it's always, I say, like, can we come and film? And they say yes, and we do it. So I just couldn't get my head around how you make a film where the people don't want you to make the film, as I knew they didn't, and have it be still true to what I do in some way. And I didn't want it to be a kind of just poking them for the sake of it type of thing. Anyway, we decided that there was a way of doing it using reenactments, in which we took a sort of meta approach to the reenactments, where the whole process of casting and reenacting how you do Scientology using actors was filmed. In other words, we filmed casting a character to play Tom Cruise, casting an actor to play David Miscavige, and role-playing the different lines, and used ex-Scientologists to kind of co-direct. So they were like, this is how you do it, and this is what Scientology is, and this was what it was like when I was in Scientology. And really, part of it was knowing that once we did that in and around Hollywood, that because Hollywood is so central to Scientology, they would get wind of what we were doing and would start coming to us. So there'd be this wraparound of them, and sure enough, they turned up and start filming us. And it turns out they were making a documentary about me, making my film about Scientology. So then it becomes this sort of whole.
When is that getting released?
January. It's out in the UK in October, but January.
No, I mean yours, the one on you.
Oh, their one. I think it'll come out. It's a great question. I'm surprised it's not out yet. I think it'll come out probably in January. I don't know, man. And
what do you think it'll be about?
I think it'll be a lot like what they have done to other journalists. They did one to Gibney. They did one on Larry Wright. They do them on ex-Scientologists if they're of sufficient kind of profile. It'll be a 10 to 15 minute thing. They'll extract any photograph where I look like a dick, or I look ugly or ludicrous, any ill-advised bit of publicity I ever did where I was promoting a series and I was looked goofy. They'll say this is a serious journalist, and then they'll take quotes from interviews out of context to make me sound like either a goofball or a kind of malicious deceiver. And if you want to really see the DNA of Scientology, I often think, because occasionally I get caught in this mindset of it's just another religion. It's no better or worse than other religions, really. And then sometimes you can slightly lose. You go native slightly, or you're on their websites and you're thinking, hey, some of this makes sense. But if you look at how they attack their enemies, they're so unlike other religions. Certainly unlike Christianity for the most part. So official Scientology's pronouncements when they attack ex-members and journalists are so sort of tabloid and childish and so malicious and nasty. You really see into something deep about their mindset. Because their view, as you mentioned, is that if you're a suppressive person, i.e. someone who's attempting to hold Scientology back, then you are fair game. Anything, they could do almost anything to try and put you out of business.
Do you think that these documentaries, whether it's Going Clear or the book by Lawrence Wright or the other woman, what was the name of her book?
Janet Reitman.
What was her book again?
Inside Scientology.
Do you think that all this data, this accumulative data, it reaches any of the members that are inside Scientology?
No,
they don't ever examine it?
No way. It's considered N theta, which is a Scientology term. It means enturbulated theta. I love this is like catnip to me explaining this stuff.
Is it?
Yeah, kind of. I just it's like I said, I was steeped in it for 3 years, kind of absorbing all this.
Was it your whole life, or did you do
it
other
wasn't.
things?
It was just it was not constantly, but you would spend a few days, kind of hours would go by, and at the end of it, you emerge like, have I learned anything? All I know now is these absurd terms that are no use to anyone, like N theta, but enturbulated theta energy is, thetans are spirits, theta is spiritual, positive spiritual energy, but enturbulated is bad. So it's basically N theta is kind of bad for your energy, I think. So it's N theta for you to be in Scientology and it could be exposed to anything negative, anything critical of Scientology. So they're encouraged to be off the internet and to be off, don't consume anything you think might be critical.
They're encouraged to be off the internet. Wow.
Oh, well, I should say that applies to people within the Sea Org, in the inner circle of Scientology. And I really want to say,
explain that,
yeah,
please.
It's a really important distinction, because I'm absolutely certain that there's plenty of extremely nice, well-adjusted Scientologists, people who consider themselves Scientologists.
My ex-neighbor, he was a really nice guy.
I bet he was, and I'm sure everything I hear about Beck, the musician, is that he's a nice guy, and I'm sure Giovanni Ribisi is a nice guy.
That guy's in?
Yeah.
Really?
You didn't know that?
That guy's in?
Yeah. Who? And Jenna Elfman? I mean,
she makes sense.
Really?
Juliette Lewis.
Yeah. I bet she's nice.
I bet she's very nice. She and I have gone back and forth. We've talked to each other through messages on Twitter. Yeah. I wanted to get her in. Talk to her.
And Danny Masterson?
I don't know who that is.
He's from, isn't he that 70s show?
He's in too?
Yeah.
Oof.
And Jason Lee, I think he might be out.
Really?
But he might not. You know who I mean? My name is Earl.
Yeah, that guy's in?
Yeah. Man, you didn't spend very long down the rabbit hole.
Well, my rabbit hole was not limited. I try to avoid any rabbit hole that involves celebrities.
But Scientology is predicated on one thing L. Ron Hubbard got right was the idea that if you get celebrities in,
Yes.
then you've got a kind of golden ticket to reaching the masses.
Yeah, I jokingly thought about joining when I first came here. I was like, maybe that's the move. Just become a Scientologist.
You could make a documentary about Scientology that would be totally different because actually maybe we've blown it by even talking about it. But if you'd gone undercover,
if I just decided that was good, I don't think they would listen. They would probably fucking hate me.
Well, it depends what you've got out there. It's too late.
I'm not
now.
a documentary maker either. I don't have that sort of attention span that you have.
You could have gone undercover, and you would have been such a great scalp for them. They would have absolutely. Because when was the last time you heard of an established celebrity actor joining? Like, I mean, can you imagine if?
Well, maybe they can.
I mean, that's why when Will Smith, there was a sniff that he might be going that way. And it went and it didn't pan out, but that was like unbelievable. And they were trying. There was a rumor that David Beckham might be flirting with it, but I mean, none of these things were borne out.
Well, what they could do for you if you were a David Beckham, or maybe even for me, is they could act as like a gang. That's sort of like
your posse
covers your back.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I think there'd be. And when I was doing the film, I went in not exactly undercover, but I went in. Not for a sequence in the film, I just to sort of keep myself grounded, to keep it all real. You know, because one of the challenges with when you're not exposed, you're not actually having day-to-day contact with the subject that you're covering, it's very easy to slip into us and them mentality of your own. And you're like, ooh, scary Scientologists, ooh, they're bad. And actually, you know, they're not. They're good people, many of them. And so I wanted to make them real, and I went along to a Scientology org and just sort of chatted to some people and said, you know, I make documentaries. I'm interested in this subject. You know, what's it all about? And they really did. One of the things they do is a fairly hard sell, but you got the impression that they would 100% kind of take your money. No, I think
they would accept you.
Yeah, they would take your money, but they would absolutely, I think, be right on it. I don't know. You know, I kind of lost confidence in. I was going to say 100% kind of have your back and be your gang, but I don't know if I really did have that sense. I think if they knew you were a celebrity, if they thought you were, they would really that you would get special treatment.